There are people whose presence is quiet, almost imperceptible, not because they're invisible, but because they move through the world without announcing themselves. Their thoughts are not broadcast, their feelings are not displayed for applause or validation, and yet they notice everything: the small shifts in tone, the unspoken tensions, the undercurrents of emotion that most never perceive. In a culture that equates visibility with value, their subtlety feels rare, even alien. But what if the key to understanding people better, really understanding them, is not in how loudly they speak, but in how deeply they observe, how patiently they listen, and how attentively they inhabit their inner world? In the next few minutes, we will explore the hidden patterns of human attention, empathy, and presence, the psychological rhythms that most overlook yet define who people truly are. There are people whose presence is felt more than it is seen. They enter a room without announcing themselves. Their movements are deliberate but unassuming. In a world that equates loudness with significance, their quietness can seem peculiar, even suspicious. Yet for them, silence is not absence, it is attention. Every glance, every subtle shift in tone, every unspoken word is registered, cataloged, and understood. They notice patterns in conversations that others overlook, the tension behind polite smiles, the hesitations hidden in gestures. They are listening to what is not said as much as what is. Their awareness is almost effortless, yet it is precise. While most people navigate social interactions reactively, responding to what is presented, quiet observers are attuned to the layers beneath. They perceive emotional rhythms that shape decisions, moods, and relationships. They sense the subtle shifts in energy that indicate joy, fear, or fatigue long before words appear. In doing so, they hold a mirror to the invisible dynamics of human connection. This sensitivity is neither performative nor deliberate. It is an innate, cultivated skill, a lens through which the world appears in greater depth and texture than it does for others. These individuals often remain underestimated. Others may misinterpret their quiet as indifference, shyness, or aloofness. In reality, it is neither. Their stillness is not a withdrawal from life, but a protection of their interior coherence. By not reacting to every stimulus, they preserve their attention and maintain the stability of their nervous system. The modern world, with its endless demands for visibility and engagement, threatens that equilibrium. Social pressure to perform, to be seen, to respond instantly, to curate identity, fragments attention and dilutes perception. The quiet observer resists that fragmentation, not through defiance, but through careful containment of presence. This skill of subtle observation often emerges early. Some quietly learned it in childhood when listening was safer than speaking, when awareness became a form of self-preservation. They noticed emotional weather before being asked, anticipated tension before it erupted, and learned to navigate interpersonal currents without drawing attention to themselves. These experiences do not harden them, rather they sharpen their perception. They are neither socially blind nor disconnected, they are socially precise. Their attunement allows them to understand complexity where others see simplicity, to recognize nuance where others see only surface, to feel depth where others feel distraction. And yet, this attentiveness carries its own weight. The mind of a quiet observer is always active, constantly processing layers of unspoken information. Every interaction, every glance, every pause contains multiple dimensions of meaning. To inhabit this level of awareness requires patience, discipline, and often a retreat from the overstimulation of the broader world. Crowds, casual chatter, rapid-fire interaction, all of it can feel exhausting. The cost of being attuned is the need for boundaries, the necessity of selective engagement. Still, they do not view these boundaries as separation from humanity. Rather, they are a means of sustaining connection on their own terms. By preserving their attention, by holding their nervous system intact, they remain capable of noticing what others miss. They remain present in a way that is full, deliberate, and deeply relational. When they speak, when they act, it is not out of compulsion, but from a place of insight and intention. The quiet observer moves through the world as a kind of unacknowledged guide. They witness, they process, and they respond with careful accuracy. Their power lies not in volume or visibility, but in the depth of their perception. They teach, silently, the value of noticing. They remind us that human experience is layered, that the most important signals are often subtle, and that sometimes, to understand people better than most, one must first learn to see quietly. The ability to observe quietly does not arise spontaneously. It is forged in early experience, shaped by the rhythms and textures of a childhood that demanded attention to nuance. Many quiet observers were children who learned, often without explicit instruction, that the world was unpredictable. They discovered, sometimes through gentle guidance, sometimes through necessity, that reading the room was a survival skill. When adults or peers shifted moods, when unspoken rules governed play and conversation, these children noticed. They absorbed patterns before language, sensed tension before it became visible, and learned to anticipate others' needs before recognizing their own. In this subtle conditioning, a nervous system tuned to precision was born. The origins are not always dramatic. Not every quiet observer endured trauma or hardship. Often it is simply the product of attunement in a complex social environment. They were the children who listened longer than they spoke, who observed the intricate interplay of gestures and tone, who discovered that outcomes often depended less on action and more on understanding. Some may have felt overstimulated by chaos, drawing inward to preserve clarity. Others were naturally sensitive, their emotions more acute, their perception more refined. In either case, early life offered lessons that the broader world often overlooks, that attention is finite, that emotion is contagious, that presence is powerful, and that the invisible currents of human interaction carry consequences as real as words. This attentiveness is mirrored in their adult interactions. The skills cultivated in childhood, listening before speaking, anticipating before acting, discerning subtle shifts in energy, become the foundation of their relational intelligence. The quiet observer learns to inhabit both their inner world and the outer world of others simultaneously, maintaining coherence where others fragment. Their early experiences teach them patience, the discipline to wait, and the capacity to hold tension without overreacting. They become, in essence, attuned stewards of human dynamics, able to detect undercurrents that most never notice. Yet these origins carry ambiguity. The very sensitivity that allows for deep perception also increases vulnerability. Early attunement to emotional atmospheres can heighten awareness of threat or disappointment. It can generate internal pressure to respond, to anticipate, to accommodate. Without guidance, a child might internalize the expectation that their observations must translate into action, that noticing without acting is insufficient. For some, these patterns create self-doubt or a sense of responsibility beyond their years. But over time, with reflection and experience, these early patterns can be refined into tools rather than burdens, mechanisms of insight rather than chains of obligation. The quiet observer's origins also shape their relationship with attention and energy. From a young age, they recognize that giving too much attention too quickly can leave them depleted. They learn the necessity of boundaries, even if they do not name them as such. They understand, implicitly, that the mind has limits and that preserving focus requires selective engagement. This early understanding becomes a cornerstone of their adult lives. The ability to inhabit social spaces without being consumed, to listen without losing oneself, to participate without sacrificing internal stability. There is a paradox embedded in these origins. While early attunement demands vigilance and observation, it also fosters a depth of relational capacity paralleled in those who do not cultivate such awareness. Quiet observers are capable of profound empathy, subtle insight, and nuanced understanding precisely because they learned early that the world is layered and that people are often more complex than they appear. They carry the lessons of their formative years like a silent map, guiding interactions, shaping perception, and enabling them to navigate life with precision and care. These origins, though subtle and often unremarked, illuminate why quiet observers perceive differently. They were not merely passive children waiting for guidance or attention. They were active participants in the unseen dimensions of human experience, learning to calibrate attention, emotion, and response with care.
Their life they inherit as adults, a life of deliberate observation, measured engagement, and internal coherence, is the natural continuation of these formative lessons. Their early perception was never accidental. It was the beginning of a lifelong dialogue with depth, attention, and relational nuance. The quiet attentiveness of those who observe deeply is not merely a personality trait, it is encoded in the rhythms of the brain and nervous system. Neuroscience shows that humans process social and emotional information in layers, some conscious, some implicit. For quiet observers, these layers are finely tuned. Their mirror neurons, the circuits that allow one to sense another's feelings, often operate with heightened sensitivity. They can detect shifts in facial microexpressions, tone, and posture that go unnoticed by most. This heightened awareness is not a choice, it is the result of subtle neural conditioning that primes the brain to prioritize relational and environmental cues over superficial distractions. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of attention and decision-making, often works in close harmony with limbic structures, the amygdala, hippocampus, and anterior cingulate cortex in quiet observers. This circuitry enables them to assess context, gauge risk, and anticipate emotional outcomes with precision. When others react impulsively, these individuals tend to pause, integrating sensory input, internal states, and social cues before responding. Their reflective processing allows for calm decision-making and a measured approach to interactions, even under stress. Over time, these neural patterns consolidate, forming a nervous system that values depth over breadth, coherence over chaos. Cognitive science further illuminates this phenomenon. Quiet observers are often skilled at managing attentional resources. Their working memory and executive function prioritize meaningful input over noise. In an era of constant stimuli, messages, notifications, and social media, their neural systems are wired to filter selectively.
The turning point for those who rarely socialize is rarely dramatic. There is no sudden epiphany or moment of revelation. Instead, it arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly, like sunlight slipping through a half-closed window. It begins with noticing, truly noticing, the subtle patterns of life and mind that had previously gone unexamined. They recognize how attention had been pulled outward for years, how the energy of self was constantly ceded to the expectations of others. And in that recognition, something shifts. The quiet observer begins to realize that withdrawal, previously seen as avoidance, is not failure, it's a form of self-alignment. This realization often comes during ordinary moments: a pause in conversation, a silent walk, a cup of tea sipped alone. They notice that the mind, when not externally occupied, begins to settle. Thoughts, once scattered and anxious, align into coherent sequences. Emotions, previously amplified by constant stimulation, temper into rhythm. They feel their nervous system relax in a way that had been unfamiliar, almost luxurious. In that stillness, the mind whispers truths that social performance had drowned out. Presence is not earned through activity. Self-worth is not measured by the gaze of others. The turning point also brings a reframing of past experiences. They recall moments of loneliness, of isolation, of subtle exclusion, and suddenly these are not deficits, but teachers. Each experience had trained the nervous system to discern authenticity, to notice depth, to value inner coherence over external approval. The suffering that once felt like a weakness is now reframed as adaptive intelligence. They understand that their early tendency to observe, to self-regulate, and to step back was not a flaw, it was preparation. Psychologically, this realization engages a subtle shift in attention. Instead of attending primarily to external validation, they begin to attend inward. They sense the boundaries of their own capacity. They feel what is nourishing versus what is depleting. They notice that not all connection requires action, and not all presence requires performance. The nervous system, trained for vigilance and social calibration, begins to recalibrate toward equilibrium, embracing pauses rather than avoiding them, and stillness rather than reaction. Alongside this awareness comes a newfound discernment. They see that much of the social noise they previously absorbed was not neutral. It carried unspoken pressures, comparison traps, and implicit expectations. They understand that stepping back is not disengagement from life, but selective engagement. They can now choose which relationships merit attention, which conversations carry depth, and which experiences support authentic growth. This discernment is both liberating and humbling. It grants autonomy, yet it also exposes the responsibility of choosing wisely, a responsibility that their inner mind now accepts with clarity rather than anxiety. The turning point is also emotional. Relief, long absent, begins to seep in. They feel less reactive, less burdened by the perpetual need to perform or be present for others. There's a quiet joy in realizing that being whole does not require constant affirmation. Vulnerability, once frightening in the presence of observers, becomes safe in solitude. The inner dialogue changes from "Am I enough?" to "I am here, I exist, I am sufficient." In these moments, the individual experiences a rare blend of presence and freedom, a combination of grounding and release that few who remain entangled in constant social feedback can feel. It is important to note that this turning point does not erase challenge. Misunderstanding, isolation, or longing may still appear, but the difference now is awareness. They navigate these experiences with choice rather than reaction, presence rather than escape. The realization is profound yet gentle. Life can be lived fully without constant social engagement, without relentless validation, and without self-erasure. Being deeply attuned to oneself is not a limitation, it is a form of mastery. In essence, the turning point and realization transform the psychology of the quiet observer. It marks the emergence of autonomy, coherence, and self-trust. It redefines social engagement as optional, selective, and intentional. It reveals that the richness of experience is not found in visibility, but in attention carefully allocated, in presence embraced, and in the quiet unfolding of internal life. In this space, the individual steps into a deeper, more resonant relationship with themselves and the world around them, no longer performing, but fully inhabiting the moments they choose to enter. Healing for those who rarely socialize does not arrive as a sudden fix. It comes quietly, in moments small and profound, often unnoticed until reflection reveals its depth. It begins with the simple act of allowing the self to exist without constant performance. After years of monitoring reactions, adjusting behavior, and containing attention, they start to inhabit their own mind fully. Silence becomes a companion, not an absence. Stillness, once uncomfortable, becomes a space for regeneration. In these moments, the nervous system, long trained for vigilance, finally finds equilibrium. Integration emerges as awareness meets choice. They recognize that attention, energy, and emotional labor are finite resources. Rather than distributing these outwardly to meet expectations, they begin to allocate them intentionally. They experiment with presence, sometimes alone, sometimes with carefully chosen others, learning that connection does not require sacrifice and solitude does not equate to loneliness. Boundaries, once a source of anxiety or guilt, become protective frameworks that nurture rather than restrict the psyche. Emotionally, this phase allows reconciliation with past patterns. They observe the ways early life shaped their relational habits, the careful listening, the anticipatory empathy, the instinct to withdraw when overwhelmed. These traits, previously framed as social deficiencies, are reframed as adaptive intelligence. The nervous system remembers and slowly reconditions that protection and openness are not opposites. The adult self learns to inhabit both worlds, the inner and the outer, without fragmentation. Past missteps, social misreads, or moments of perceived awkwardness are no longer evidence of inadequacy, but are reframed as steps along a learning curve, each one offering insight and resilience. Psychologically, this realization engages a subtle shift in attention. Instead of attending primarily to external validation, they begin to attend inward. They sense the boundaries of their own capacity. They feel what is nourishing versus what is depleting. They notice that not all connection requires action, and not all presence requires performance.
The nervous system, trained for vigilance and social calibration, begins to recalibrate toward equilibrium, embracing pauses rather than avoiding them, and stillness rather than reaction. Alongside this awareness comes a newfound discernment. They see that much of the social noise they previously absorbed was not neutral. It carried unspoken pressures, comparison traps, and implicit expectations. They understand that stepping back is not disengagement from life, but selective engagement. They can now choose which relationships merit attention, which conversations carry depth, and which experiences support authentic growth. This discernment is both liberating and humbling. It grants autonomy, yet it also exposes the responsibility of choosing wisely, a responsibility that their inner mind now accepts with clarity rather than anxiety. The turning point is also emotional. Relief, long absent, begins to seep in. They feel less reactive, less burdened by the perpetual need to perform or be present for others. There's a quiet joy in realizing that being whole does not require constant affirmation. Vulnerability, once frightening in the presence of observers, becomes safe in solitude. The inner dialogue changes from "Am I enough?" to "I am here, I exist, I am sufficient." In these moments, the individual experiences a rare blend of presence and freedom, a combination of grounding and release that few who remain entangled in constant social feedback can feel. It is important to note that this turning point does not erase challenge. Misunderstanding, isolation, or longing may still appear, but the difference now is awareness. They navigate these experiences with choice rather than reaction, presence rather than escape. The realization is profound yet gentle. Life can be lived fully without constant social engagement, without relentless validation, and without self-erasure. Being deeply attuned to oneself is not a limitation, it is a form of mastery. Psychologically, this realization engages a subtle shift in attention. Instead of attending primarily to external validation, they begin to attend inward. They sense the boundaries of their own capacity. They feel what is nourishing versus what is depleting. They notice that not all connection requires action, and not all presence requires performance. The nervous system, trained for vigilance and social calibration, begins to recalibrate toward equilibrium, embracing pauses rather than avoiding them, and stillness rather than reaction. Alongside this awareness comes a newfound discernment. They see that much of the social noise they previously absorbed was not neutral. It carried unspoken pressures, comparison traps, and implicit expectations. They understand that stepping back is not disengagement from life, but selective engagement. They can now choose which relationships merit attention, which conversations carry depth, and which experiences support